It's that time of the year once again. The NAB Show 2019 is currently underway in Las Vegas at the moment. We've had some exciting announcements from Canon with their new Sumia PL mount lens Cinema Primes. Also, Adamas has released the Shogun 7, which has some crazy features like multi-input recording on a 7-inch monitor. And Sharp have an 8K camera that comes in at $4,000. Is that supposed to be Sharp or is that Sony? Is it the A7S III we've all been waiting for? No, apparently it's Sharp. So earlier this year, Sharp announced that they were working on an 8K camera and they basically teased it. But now at NAB 2019, they've actually got this thing on display. They're saying it's going to come out later this year at a price point of, wait for it, $4,000. Now, that's no small feat because at the end of the day, if you want to shoot 8K at the moment, you've got to go into the professional space of cameras like the Red Helium, which have an 8K sensor, and then you've obviously got to deal with the whole Red workflow. It's a whole lot of money and obviously a whole lot of space at the end of the day, and it's really reserved for specific productions. So for Sharp to come out with a camera that can shoot 8K at a prosumer level price point, it's a pretty big deal, and I think it's going to make some waves in that respect because camera manufacturers, like the ones we've already been talking about, our Sony, our Panasonic, our Fujifilm, they're going to have to start to play catch up over the next couple of years, I'd assume, to get to that level of having an 8K camera at around that price point. It's not something that's going to happen overnight, and Sharp have kind of started to get the ball rolling just by putting a camera out there. So let's first of all address the elephant in the room, Sharp. So Sharp is a company that really no one would have expected to release this kind of camera. Now, if you kind of put this into an analogy, it's kind of like Sharp is that kid at the back of the classroom who hasn't said anything at this point, and then at the science fair that year releases an amazing project which just boggles everyone's mind and no one really knew they had it in them. That's what's going on right now with Sharp. A lot of people are just like, oh yeah, 8K camera, $4,000, Sharp, what? If they did want to make an impact in that space, they've definitely done that just by putting that 8K camera out there and saying it's going to come out later this year at $4,000. I hope for their sake they're able to deliver on that and all the promises they're making right now, but obviously we'll just have to wait and see. So let's talk about the camera first. I kind of want to go over what's good about it, what's not good about it, in its current form. Now, obviously it's not finished, it's not a final product, so no one's got a review out there yet. No one really knows what it's going to look like once it does release. And when I say look like, I mean how it's going to be to experience and to use it. But right now, obviously it's missing a couple of key features like focus assist, it's missing focus magnification, things like that, which would make the camera a lot easier to use. But right now it's pre-production model. So I'm not going to judge the camera on the fact that it doesn't have focus magnification because Sharp is saying that kind of stuff will come later on down the track. What I will say though is that it's got 8-bit 420 internal .mp4 codec at the moment, H.265, which is the reason they're able to get that kind of compression on there. But they do say that again, as it gets closer to production, they're going to try and get 10-bit 420 in there and 10-bit 422 out. So it's kind of going to be like the Fujifilm X-T3 in that respect. I don't know about recording options just yet. Right now it's 200 megabits per second is the bit rate of the file, which when you think about it isn't a huge amount because at the moment I can shoot up to 400 megabits per second on the Fujifilm X-T3 in 4K. But suddenly when we're talking about 200 megabits per second in an 8K file, that's double the resolution, and that's a lot of information to put in 200 megabits per second. So I'd be really keen to see once the camera comes out how it is able to handle things like color grading. Obviously, if you're trying to push the image, how it holds up and how it looks as well, obviously an 8K image. Now, the next thing I want to talk about is the lens mount. This Sharp 8K camera is using a micro four thirds lens mount, which when you think about it, micro four thirds, trying to shoot 8K through those lenses and resolve that detail, it does seem like a bit of a task. Now, I am no expert in shooting micro four thirds lenses on an 8K sensor, so I'm going to reserve my judgment until it kind of comes out later in the year and we see how that all works. But obviously it's just, what I'm getting at here is this Sharp 8K camera is like really a lot of other cameras out there in that kind of lower end price range of our Sony a7 III, our Panasonic GH5S, our Fujifilm X-T3. But the main feature it has going for it is the 8K sensor. So what I want to address in this video is, do we need 8K at this point? Or has Sharp kind of got the ball rolling, but maybe come out a little bit too early, if that makes sense? So right now, obviously, a lot of us might have 4K cameras because they've been out for a little while. Most of us maybe shoot 4K for certain projects and then deliver in 1080p for clients, or if we're doing our own short films and things like that, personal projects, we might shoot 4K and deliver in 4K. If you're doing documentary style work, you might dream of being able to shoot in 8K and get down to 4K. But the Sharp 8K camera isn't that camera. It's kind of, again, it's marketed as a prosumer camera, much more like a Sony a7 III, Panasonic GH5, Fujifilm X-T3. And that's my kind of issue with it here, right? When we talk about having a 8K prosumer camera, obviously we compare it to something that's already out there, which is something like the Red Helium. And yes, the price difference is massive. We're not even going to get into the price difference here. We don't need to worry about that because we already know that if you're looking at a Red camera, $4,000 is pocket change for you. But the thing is, $4,000 is more expensive than some of the other cameras out there, like the Fujifilm X-T3, which I recently acquired and have done a few videos on. That camera there has some pretty impressive 4K specs in terms of what it can shoot, 10-bit internally, 10-bit 422 out, with something like an Atomos Ninja 5 recorder. So I've been really happy with that camera and what it's able to deliver. Sharp's 8K camera, you really need to have a use for 8K before you think about investing even more money into an 8K camera rather than going for something that we already know is out there and is really good at the moment, like those Fujifilm, Sony, and Panasonic cameras. And my question really is, what is your use for an 8K camera? Because if you are shooting commercial type projects and you want to be able to shoot in 8K and deliver in 4K, because then you'd have that same kind of flexibility you have shooting 4K and delivering in 1080, the Sharp camera doesn't seem like the camera for you because, again, it's not a professional production like camera, it's a prosumer camera, more in a photography kind of style body. It has a 5-inch touchscreen, which actually flips out, and to be honest, it's probably the most impressive feature for me because a lot of other camera manufacturers apparently can't do this. I'm not quite sure what the problem is, but even though most people have been asking for ages for flip out screens, we don't have that just yet with things like the Sony a7 III. So for commercial work, it doesn't look like the Sharp 8K camera is going to be the one for you. If you're shooting short films, things like that, again, there are probably better options in a similar price range that are already well established, but the only thing they won't have going for it is 8K. Documentary filmmakers, maybe I can see this being really useful because obviously the idea of being able to reframe your shots later, get different kinds of coverage from the one shot, it does sound pretty, I guess, impressive when you think about the fact that it's achievable, and obviously it would make your life a little bit easier when you are working in such a fast-paced environment and not really being able to take the time to set up these shots sometimes. But that kind of leaves the YouTubers, right? The people who are out there every day, maybe doing some vlogs and things like that. And it was actually Charles Hain, No Film School, who did a video on this recently, talking to one of the guys from Sharp about this camera at NAB, and kind of said, yeah, that flip out screen would be great for vlogging. And here I am kind of thinking to myself, it's such an potentially unnecessary thing to be vlogging in 8K. I mean, even Casey Neistat, who I know loves his technology, he might do this once or twice, but to shoot 8K every time to get this vlog out, to work with massive files like this, it just doesn't seem like it's that viable just yet, or that exciting just yet either. Especially when most of us are still watching a lot of content on our smartphones, on our devices, which don't even have 4K screens. 8K does seem like it's going to be a little way off yet. I'm sure it's going to get there because, again, more and more 8K stuff is coming out. I think what surprises me the most about this is the price point of $4,000, which usually we tend to see things like an 8K camera come out and it's $50,000, and then another one comes out and it's $20,000, and then there's a $10,000 8K camera, and then we keep going down until we get to the $2,000, sub $2,000 range again in a few years' time. Sharp have really hit this nerve just by releasing a camera that is so affordable for a lot of people who, again, are looking to purchase a camera. even a Canon C200 is going to be more expensive than a Sharp 8K prosumer camera, but at the end of the day, they are totally different cameras, and the main thing the Sharp has going for it is the 8K sensor. And for me, that's just not enough reason to want to upgrade a camera just because it shoots in double the resolution, especially when that user experience of actually operating and using this device just may not be the same as something like a dedicated video professional camera. So that's my 2 cents. I would love to hear your opinion as well. If you guys obviously have some differing opinions in terms of what you think of the Sharp 8K camera, please feel free to leave them down below, and I'd love to have a bit of a read. I'll try and reply to as many as possible. If you guys want, you can tweet me over on Twitter. You can hit me up on Instagram as well. I'm going to try to be a lot more active on these social platforms these days. So you can find me over there, and until the next video, catch you soon.